Microsoft is preparing to launch the Xbox Game Store on the iPhone as early as next year, but the plans depend on multiple regulatory measures. Right. First of all, Apple has to be forced into it because they're not going to sign up to say, yes, absolutely. I mean, after the whole Epic thing, they're like, you got to process that through us, and we want 30%. And Microsoft's going to say, well, that's not feasible. Look at the margins.
And then the EU will come in and be like, hey, Apple, that's unfair.
That's what the hope is, I presume. Yeah. Microsoft's sitting there saying, well, if you're making all these rulings, Activision stuff we're working on, how about Apple? What about them? We want to be in a position to offer Xbox and content from both us and our third-party partners across any screen where somebody would want to play, Spencer told the Financial Times. Today, we can't do that on mobile devices, but we want to build towards a world that we think will be coming where those devices are opened up. In December, Bloomberg's Mark Gurman reported that Apple was preparing to allow alternative app stores on the iPhone in order to comply with the Digital Markets Act, which is expected to come into effect in March 2024. Gurman said Apple was aiming to roll out the changes with an iOS 17 update next year for iPhone users in Europe only, meaning the Xbox Game Store would not be available in the US, at least initially. So there you go. They say, okay, here's what we're gonna want. Use Europe as an example. Why should the regulatory body in Europe allow this to happen but not in the US? Microsoft obviously being a US-based company and the US market being an enormous gaming market, that's going to be a key component in the viability of their independent Microsoft Game Store inside of iOS. Now, Apple themselves saying, hey, we're going to open it up. I know they were kind of reluctant. It took a court to force them in order to do that. Now, do they try to avoid U.S. courts because it's a bad look? Do they get out preemptively? Do they cut a deal with Microsoft exclusively? A la Netflix, like an old school type deal that they seemingly have been trying. They've been trying to avoid it recently, most famously with Epic. So it would be cool. I think customers would prefer it. I mean, try to give me. They have given the argument multiple times on why customers need the protection of Apple in the App Store to process their payments. I'm like, look, man. These are the customers who are already Microsoft customers. They're already sending money to Microsoft without you, Apple. They're not all that concerned about that in this scenario. I don't think we need to worry in this particular case. It's a case-by-case basis, and here we're dealing with an absolute monster in the form of Microsoft, where people already have a relationship. They may have game streaming, and they probably have a credit card connected. So
just build that experience, enable it for iOS. Because they're just probably going to use some sort of like workaround in Safari.
Currently it's a browser. It's trash setup at the moment. And so I don't buy that argument in that case. If you're some other random upstart and you want to start charging people money in app and you want to do some sort of app store workaround, that's one thing. But if you're a Microsoft or an Epic, it's another thing. And I know they use the slippery slope thing, but it's a different thing.
Yeah.